Alright, if I can swap. Alright, so this game is between Vasily Smyslov and Polugaevsky. It was played at Palma de Majorca in Spain around 1970. So Smyslov is white and he plays knight f3. Polugaevsky replies with knight f6, g3, g6. So the king's in the attack symmetrical defense. Smyslov plays b3, so he's trying to take this very nice diagonal from black. Bishop g7, bishop e2, d6. So Polugaevsky might be playing e5 or potentially c5 later. d4, taking the center. Castle, castle, or bishop g2 first. e5. Smyslov takes, knight g4. This is all standard stuff. And h3. Alright, attacking the knight. Knight takes, and we have the trade of the queens. So very early on move 10, Smyslov enters a very simple line. So let's kind of evaluate it. Black has the very nice d file. Other than that, though, black's queenside is undeveloped. White has two pieces developed, maybe not that, but two bishops. One very nice diagonal towards the b7 pawn with the rook at the end. The other one is striking the e pawn. So as we can tell, white's position is a little bit more aggressive. White is putting pressure on the e pawn, and black's bishop is being forced to defend the e pawn. But other than that, I would say the evaluation is relatively equal. Knight d2. d7, queenside castle. So now Smyslov also has the open d file and protects his king a little bit, as well as providing protection to the b2 bishop. Rook e8, backing the pawn. Knight c4, putting additional pressure. Knight b6, knight a5. Knight a5. Personally, I think it's a very nice move. Initially, it looks like the knight is being put on the rim, but as you can tell, there's just a lot of pressure now on the b7 pawn, and if with its fall, the rook on a8. This kind of puts black in a little bit of a difficult position. Polugaevsky plays rook b8, which is a fine move. Rook d2, c6. Rook on a to d1, f6. Polugaevsky reinforces the center, as you can tell. The black's f pawn guards e5, and this guards d4, so he has a lot of dark square control. Rook d8. All right, if you have two rooks, if you have the double rooks on the file, penetrating to the 7th and 8th rank. King f7, just dodging and moving the king closer to the center. Takes, bishop a3. I think bishop a3 is a wonderful move. So we can tell here that at first glance, this dark square bishop is kind of useless. It's fighting for this square, and the only other square that I can safely go to is here. Other than that, it's really just running into granite at e5. There's really no prospects here. Even a move like f4, trying to open things up, it's just not going to work because there's extra reinforcement on e5. So Smyslov moves it to a nice open diagonal, cutting across the king, and on top of that, taking advantage of black's weakened dark squares. Knight d5, centralizing the knight. Now bishop d6. Very nice move. We attack the rook here, forcing the rook to move so we gain a tempo. And now c4. Again, a very logical move. Black has a very nice knight on d5, so we must push it away. Knight e7, bishop c7. This is now threatening an invasion on d8 with the rook on d1. f5, taking more space. Check, king here, c5. So 1, we allow the knight to reroute to c4, and 2, we get this very nice outpost on d6. Now it does come at a cost. Polugaevsky immediately takes advantage of it, lands a knight on d5. Bishop d6, bishop f6. You want to put pressure on the rook, right? Check, king g7, and now knight c4. All right, so bringing the knight back in from the flank into the center. e4. All right, e4. This is, again, a very nice move. White's bishop is now hitting a rock. This just takes more space, and on top of that, this is a much nicer diagonal. You can bring the knight in, bring the bishop in. Just an evaluation. Again, it's very hard to play as black. Yes, you do have two very nice minor pieces, but if we look at the grand scheme of things, white has 3 pieces that are relatively useful. Black only has 2, and the worst part about this is it's very hard to develop this rook and this bishop. There's not really an obvious way. Moves like b6, just kind of hang a pawn. It creates more weaknesses. And, it takes a lot of tempi. It's going to take at least, 1, 2 tempi to bring this bishop. And even then, if you do bring the bishop, it's hitting a very dead square on c6. There's no diagonal here. So black is in a bit of trouble. f3, trying to open up the diagonal, right? This is a very useless bishop. There's no really other good diagonals. You don't want to play e3 here. The issue with a move like e3 is that we weaken the light squares here. So maybe at some point there could be a knight going in here, or knight going here and here, right? You're giving black essentially unnecessary counter-attacking chances. So f3, right? Simply attacking and trying to break the wall down. Captures, bishop captures, so the diagonal's open again. Bishop g5 check. Smyslov moves the king. Knight c3 check. And now king e1. Now he plays knight b5. It actually turns out that knight takes a2. It was possible. The reason why he didn't play is because, after a move like knight e5, it's very hard to play black's position. Yes, you are up a pawn, but Polugaevsky knows that you have 3 pieces coming to your king, yet these pawns are mobile. Essentially, you're getting very close to checkmate, and on top of that, you have 2 undeveloped pieces. This is not solving any problems. Your knight's on the rim, and your one defender is going to get chased away. So, okay, knight b5. We had rook to e8. This is actually a very key move. So, with knight to b5, Polugaevsky is threatening to capture this bishop, which is guarding this rook. So let's say white makes a nothing move, then black can take here, and this rook's undefended, and all the position starts to collapse. So we had rook e8, king f7, attacking the rook, and now rook to h8, attacking the h7 bishop. Bishop f6, knight e5, excellent move. Knight e5, centralizing the knight, bring the knight into the game, king g7, and now rook e8. And now you don't have the same variation. We don't have, for one, the rook's not on f8 anymore. And for second, if let's say knight takes, pawn takes, white gets a very dangerous passed d pawn. Maybe something like this. But then white's just going to come back here. I mean, you can't develop your bishop. If you play bishop d7, rook e7 check, you can't go to e6, and white can easily come back even after king f7. This is just losing. There's nothing for black to do here. The bishop is paralyzed. The rook is paralyzed. White's just completely winning. So we have h5, gaining more space, stopping g4 ideas, but e3, simply guarding the d4 square. Knight c3, knight takes c6, a very nice tactic. So it turns out, very oddly, that this bishop is pinned, right? It also turns out that if these diagonals were open, this rook would be lost. So knight takes c6. Again, it's a very complicated tactic, but you can tell that Smyslov's position was so much superior that there was just nothing for Polugaevsky to do. The tactics were simply much superior here. Takes, bishop takes, after bishop b7, rook takes, bishop takes, rook takes a7. Alright, so you may say, like after just dodging, you say, okay, but Polugaevsky's got the 3 minor pieces for a rook and a bishop, it must be, at least holdable. And, this king's maybe a little bit loose, this pawn's a little bit weak. But as we can tell, white has 3 passed pawns. We have a C pawn, the B pawn, and now the A pawn. And it's just completely winning for white. Rook A6, attacking the bishop. Bishop D5, nicely centralizing. But now C6, simply advancing the C pawn. A very simple plan. Knight D5, C7. Alright, bishop B7. And now rook A8. That's a very nice move. Maybe people would play rook b6. Rook b6 is completely fine, but rook a8 is fancier. And now king f7. Obviously, you can't take, otherwise I create a queen, and you're just completely losing after that. We have king f7, and now bishop b4. Again, you still cannot take because of the queen. And so Polugaevsky resigns. Now, why did Polugaevsky resign? Well, after bishop b4, essentially saying that you have no moves. I mean, you can't take the bishop. My next move is c8 queen. And let's say you try to, generate something. Let's say you try to take a pawn, right? I'm going to play c8 queen. This is probably the simplest. c8 queen, takes. These pawns are not going anywhere. And on top of that, white still has these very nice passers here. Very nice passers. There's just no way you're going to win in this position. So that's why Polugaevsky resigned the game. So again, that is my analysis of Smyslov versus Polugaevsky. And I want to go back to some of the key points. Because after queen takes d, it's a very odd move. It's normally that white doesn't do this kind of exchange, especially giving black this very nice open d file. But there's some key takeaways we can take out of this. For one, it turns out that white just gets a very nice positional advantage. If we compare the development, Polugaevsky's knight d7 wasn't the best. After takes knight d2, we could probably say that c6 was a little bit better. c6 first, so you can play moves like bishop e6, knight b d7. In that way, your bishop can actually develop. As we saw in the game, Polugaevsky fell behind a lot in development, right? Rook e8, kind of these wasting moves. And that's what cost him the game. This bishop and this rook couldn't develop. And, this weird, awkward defense of rook b8, rook d2. And even here, even though it looks like both sides have the same amount of material, white's just completely winning. Like, even though, the queens are exchanged, you would think that Polugaevsky should be able to hold, but due to his really odd development, the rook is still here, the bishop is still stuck on c8, and this knight, it's kind of awkward on b6, and this kind of poor bishop. It's quite clear that just comparing the pieces, Smyslov is better. I mean, look at these rooks. These rooks on d1, d2 dominate the d file. This bishop on b2 is exerting pressure on e5. This bishop here exerting very nice pressure, especially against this b7, c6 chain, which again is kind of a big theme. It looks like that because of the pressure, black is forced to defend those points. So we saw that, and simply from a superior position, Smyslov was able to take home the victory.